Welcome back to New to Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and today I am super lucky to have such a great guest. It's a guest that you guys haven't seen before because we have the pleasure of having Alex Moran on here today. And Alex is someone who worked for one of the top distributors in America for medical device sales and now has taken a clinical specialist role with one of the top medical device sale companies in the world. And so being able to have his experience on here today, even just go into detail what a clinical specialist is later in this episode to let you guys see kind of the different routes that you could possibly take is just amazing. And we're excited to have him. So Alex, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to jump on and be with our listeners today.
Yeah, absolutely, Jacob. I appreciate you having me on. This has definitely been very valuable for me. So hopefully, I'll be able to shed some light on my job and how I got in and whatnot, and be able to help some other people out.
Oh yeah, you'll for sure do that today. And just a fun fact, you guys. So Alex reached out to me, let me know he got his position. But Alex has actually been a listener of the podcast, so that's been a lot of fun. We were just talking off air how he used to have a commute and he'd be listening to my podcast while he'd be getting ready for the week. And so again, it's just fun to meet you guys and meet everybody who's listening and know that sometimes I might be making sense, maybe when I don't think I am, but just that people want to listen and go. But again, Alex, we're going to dive deep into it today because I want to give as much value as we can to these listeners of like what a clinical specialist is and all that. But before
Yeah, of course.
to that, can you kind of give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, so I definitely have a little bit more unique background, I think, just because of how young I am. So I just graduated college in December of 2020. So I am right out of the gate. So I definitely had an advantage because I knew for a very long time I wanted to be in the medical device industry. So before I graduated high school, actually, and just kind of throughout my younger years, the sport of wrestling was always what I focused on, what me and my family did all year round. Some of like my fondest memories are me and my brothers and my dad. We'd be driving around Ohio, going to tournaments and stuff like that. So that was awesome. And so it was my junior year. I actually ended up tearing my labrum and needing surgery. And so when I was having that surgery, I had a good friend whose dad was a rep, not actually an orthopedic rep, but in a different division. And he kind of told me when he found out I was having surgery about his role in the OR and just overall about his job and what he's able to do with to advance medicine and be able to really help the doctor be able to stay on top of his game and be up to date on new products and new procedures. And so ever since then, I thought that was awesome. I had no idea that was a role. I mean, I was pretty naive. I was 16 or 17 years old, and I had never explored this route before. So I really had a head start. So I knew from that point on that this is what I wanted to do. I had no idea that anyone else was in the OR. I really thought it was the doctor and a nurse and maybe someone else. I had no idea. So when I came to college, I had 4 years to really, or actually 3.5, to really cement myself to be able to break in post graduation. And I was able to do so.
I love that, man. And no, it's funny because I say this all the time. I've been into the industry for 9 months now. It was 6 months before that. A year and a half ago, I had no idea about this profession. No idea.
Right.
It wasn't until I was doing my personal training and one of my clients started telling me about this world. And I was like, what is this? So I totally understand, man. It's such a cool industry. And like you said, this is the one industry I always push to people because you can be in the OR, you can be in the surgeries, you can have impact in people's life, and you don't have to go through 14 years of schooling or 12 years of extra schooling and all the debt load with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very humbling. I'm sure it is for you as well, being in the room with some really bright and, brilliant individuals and being able to even help them in small ways some days, more than others, of course, but it's definitely exciting, keeps you on your toes. And, that's why I love it so much. I'm sure you probably feel the same way.
100%. That was actually one of my answers when they're like, why medical device sales? And I was like, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I always want to be learning. And when you're with those surgeons,
Nice.
man, like those guys are so smart and they
Right.
love knowledge and what they can just teach you. And like you said, when you can just be an asset that maybe helps just a little bit and can make their job easier and know that's impacting someone's life, it's those little things that make just a big difference in this world.
No kidding. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So that's great. So I love the background again. So we just talked a little bit. So you were at a giant distributorship, which again, if you guys haven't, I have a podcast going in. What's the difference between working for like a distributorship and working for a giant company? And so you worked for a distributorship. You did more of like the associate sales rep role. Again, maybe not with the title, but more of that
Yep.
role. And then you went into a clinical specialist with this new giant company in medical device sales. And so, can you kind of just go into detail, maybe what the difference between a clinical specialist and an associate sales rep would be?
Yeah. So, an associate would be definitely the more entry level position. So when I was an associate, I was covering cases when needed, but my goal was really to learn. So just really be a sponge, absorb everything that I can, and a lot of running trays, making sure our inventory was where it needed to be, and working out the logistics was definitely my biggest role on the team. But again, like I said, I did cover cases. I was soaking up the information that was needed to be a territory manager, to be a full line sales rep. So yeah, that was really my experience as an associate. And with the distributor that I was with, I was able to see tons of orthopedic cases, and it was a great experience to really pinpoint what I wanted to do, what I liked, maybe what I was not as interested in and whatnot. So yeah, that was my experience as an associate. But the clinical specialist is, like I said, a little bit of a step up. So being a clinical specialist, this sounds maybe obvious, but they need you to be a clinical specialist. They
Yeah.
need you to be a master of the product, a master of the anatomy, the procedure, and really just be able to be the eyes and ears for the territory manager. So being in a clinical specialist role, so I'm working hand in hand with a territory manager, but I'm not running trays. I'm not doing anything like that. That's not really with the division I'm in. That's not really necessary. But in general, so I'm covering cases. I'm also servicing our patients. And so with this division in particular, there's a ton of patient interaction, and that's something that I really wish I could see with my last role. So I would cover a case. Everything would go well when I was an associate with my last position, and I was always curious. What was their progression like? How was their rehabilitation and whatnot? So now this role, we joke around, we're married to our patient as soon as our device is implanted in them. So I'm with them the whole step of the way. They have my phone number, they're calling me when something's going wrong. I'm going into um, the doctor's offices and really just assisting with making sure that their product is fulfilling what it needs to fulfill. So that's so different than being an associate, or just in general, just completely different divisions. But yeah, so as a clinical specialist as well, I'm an addition to the territory manager. No means the territory manager. My head is not on the chopping block for quota or anything like that. But as an associate, you are an associate. You do some of the territory manager duties when they're not able to be there, but it's just a step up being a clinical specialist. The expectations are higher, and they're really counting on you to always be, an extension of them and be an extension of the company and be able to be an asset right away. Where as an associate, I was had a little bit more leeway where, hey, he's still learning and whatnot, and a little bit more shadow. But now as a clinical specialist, it's you got to strap in, you got to be ready to go, and be able to really help the team and be an asset right away.
I love that. That was a great description of it, Alex. I appreciate it. So you guys again listening, there's a couple different routes that you can go into once you're trying to get into medical device sales. And most people just think about associate sales rep and then they're going into a full line sales rep, right? That's typically what we've, especially on here, talked about. And the thing that you're hearing though is there's other options. And just how Alex mentioned about it, when you're doing the clinical specialist, you're still in the surgeries, you're still helping with the patients, you're still being a specialist in what you do, but maybe you're not the one on the chopping block for quota, right? And why this is important, right, is what people don't talk about in medical device sales, maybe when you're first starting out is, hey, you don't hit quota, after a couple of years, you might not be with the company anymore. Like that's just the reality. You're there to drive revenue and make sure that you're hitting your quota, right? And in your realm, in a clinical specialist, that's not so much a concern as much as, being there for your patients, helping out, making sure that they're getting what they need to, and making sure everybody is supported. And so again, like Alex said, is like you could be the territory manager and then you have a clinical specialist working underneath you. But again, Alex isn't the one on the chopping block on like when, hey, we didn't hit quota, what the heck's going on? That's the thing. So I just want you guys to hear that, because when you're an associate sales rep, maybe that's a route you can go into, be as a clinical specialist. Because we've talked about, if you guys haven't, about the associate sales rep, like he said, running more trays, doing more things. And then also we've talked about salary, what they make, and then going into a clinical specialist. That was a comment I know when I was reaching out to people about clinical specialists. You can go and you can do very well as a clinical specialist without all the headaches and stuff of a territory manager. Because again, the thing I want to just make a comment, being a TM, is, it's not just covering cases, like, especially I don't have an associate, so I'm covering cases, I'm running trays, I'm making sure the equipment's all ran, I'm still worrying about quota, I'm making sure that accounts have everything they need and supplied, I'm making sure that I'm sending stuff out, I'm making sure things are built. Like, you have a million different hats that you're doing stuff with on top of everything else, right? Compared to more what Alex is going into, is he's yes, he has a lot of hats he's still wearing, but he's more specialized on what he's focusing on.
Yeah, you hit that right on the head, Jacob.
Yeah. So again, everybody just listening to this, if you guys have never thought about a clinical specialist, that was something when I reached out to a couple clinical specialists. They said, "Hey, I didn't want to just worry about the quota. I didn't want to worry about making sales or anything, but I wanted to still do almost all the same job duties, especially like being in the surgeries and helping." And like you said, that's been a common thing, is being able to interact with the patients. They want to see it through. That's been a common thing I've heard. So, if you guys haven't thought about a clinical specialist, I would highly encourage you guys to go and just do a little more research and maybe reach out to some more clinical specialists just to kind of find out really what the big difference is. But just understand, when you are the associate, your job is, like we've talked about, you're the grunt, you're there to learn, you're there to, run the trays and do the stuff that the TM doesn't have time to do, compared to, when you're a clinical specialist, you're not most likely running like that, running the trays, doing all this stuff, and you're not worrying about the quota, because then the associate would go to the TM and now you have all that. So I appreciate you going into detail on that, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we went in there. That was a big point I wanted to get across, because I've had questions about clinical specialists. But let's go back into, okay, so you were at a distributorship. Now you're like, hey, I think I'm going to go something else. I'm going to go to this giant medical device company, and I want to go into a clinical specialist. Can you kind of tell us what that interview process was kind of like, and what you did for yourself to stand out and land the position that you had? Because again, we've never had a guest that's really like was in one medical device and just got one with a new one. So I would love to hear kind of how you handled that situation.
Yeah, so I'll start with the interview process. So before I even really dive into the interview process, something that's really important if you're trying to break in, is that's kind of forgotten sometimes, is relationships with recruiters. So, everyone's worried about the hiring manager, the territory manager, and those are decision makers. Those people are extremely important. But because of my relationship with this particular recruiter, that is really why I got in front of who I needed to get in front of. And so, he was a third party recruiter. We had a great relationship, and he would call me. I would always kind of mess with him. He would call me and he would be like, "Alex, I have this position for you. It's with X, Y, and Z doing this. Are you interested?" I was like, "No, I'm not interested. I like where I'm at right now." And thank you. 2 weeks later, "Alex, come on, man. I think you like this." And I would say, "No, I think I'm okay." And then he finally came to me with this opportunity with, a very large company, very well-known company. And I thought, all right, this is my opportunity to break in, because I'd been trying to get with my current company for a very long time. This was kind of my dream. So when I broke in with, to the interview process, I met initially with the hiring manager. We had just even before the interview process, we just had an intro conversation to see if it was something I would be, wanted to move forward with. So I met with her a few times. I met with a couple territory managers, and I would have actually gone on a ride along, but I was not a local candidate, so they kind of bypassed that. And then the last step was I met with the area manager via Zoom. So It was a relatively short interview process because they needed to fill the position quickly, and I had already been referred to it. So it wasn't a normal interview process, I would say, but it was definitely in depth, and they definitely vetted me pretty well before they offered me the position. And so, one big thing was, why am I leaving this company I just started with, or this distributorship rather? And I told them, my goal was not to work for this distributorship. My goal was to work for you guys. And so, there's red flags in the hiring process when, someone jumps around a lot, or someone maybe doesn't spend an adequate amount of time with companies, and it's a pattern. And so this really wasn't the case for me. I was just really interested in that particular company, and, my connection I had built with this third party recruiter. He came to me. I didn't really seek it out, so to speak. And so that's how I ended in this role. So yeah, it was definitely crazy. I had to make a move, had to relocate, and throw everything in my small car and drive in a pretty short amount of time. So I'm still boxes in my living room here. I'm not all the way not all the way moved in, but yeah, to answer your question, that was probably the interview process.
I love it, man. And just want to touch on for the listeners out there, again, comes down to a relationship, comes down to, networking, having people in your corner, and having that recruiter in your corner wanting you to do this, and again, putting you up there, I imagine made a big difference in this whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to answer your how did I stand out in the interview process. So before you even start the interview process, this is something that I've just kind of carried with me throughout my whole life. And even when it probably wasn't true, I just told myself that it was true. So when I first started applying to positions, and say I would get an interview, say I wouldn't get an interview, or say I hadn't found out that I hadn't gotten an interview yet, I would just pound into my brain that, you are the best candidate for this position, and you are going to get this job. And so, even probably 100 times throughout all the application process I've been through, I was definitely not the best candidate in jobs I got, or I didn't get. But you just have to have a level of self belief that, it is going to happen. And I remember I had like an aha moment where I finally got an interview with this company that an attractive company that many people have been trying to work for. Not my company I'm working for now, but a different company. And when I first got that interview, I realized, I can do this. I finally did it. I finally got an interview. I don't have the job yet, and I actually I didn't end up getting the job, but I made it pretty far into the process, and I realized I was that close that someone's going to take a chance on me. So
Yep.
before standing out, you really have to stand out to yourself that you are going to be a good candidate for this position, and
Yeah.
pound it into your brain. Have that level of belief in yourself that you're going to get the job, and not only are you going to get the job, but you're going to do well in the job, because anyone can get a job, but you need to be able to perform, and live up to that long list of duties that are on every job description. And so that's something that I would say, just to start even before you really begin the interview process. But how I stood out in the interview process, I would say follow up is a huge thing. So
Mhm.
immediately after the interviews, it sounds cliche. Everyone does it, you think, but I followed up. I would send an email to whoever I interviewed with, and thank them for their time, and I would always ask them a question so we could exchange responses from there. I wouldn't leave it with "thank you for your time, I'm looking forward to hearing from you." They have 50 other of those. I'd say,
Yep.
by the way, while we're still communicating, I wouldn't necessarily say while we're still communicating, but you see what I mean. But by the way, what do you think about this aspect, or how do you think this part of the business is changing? And
Yeah.
by having that personal touch in your follow up, I think is really going to assist, you in standing out, because, hey, this candidate is not only following up like, 90% of everyone else is, but they're interested in this part of the business, or they're trying to see how this changed. And that's huge. You need to be able to stand out in any way possible, especially in the early stages. There's
Yep.
a stack of candidates, and some of them have more experience, some of them have less. So you might be
Yep.
right in the middle, you might be at the top or bottom, doesn't matter. You need to be able to stand out. And so also, I would say, connecting with people outside of the team that you're interviewing on, getting all perspectives. And then if they bring it up in the process, you can say, hey, I spoke with so and so on this team, and she gave me a really unique perspective. And being able to do that, and of course, making sure it's okay to name drop someone, or you don't even necessarily need to name drop them. Just I spoke with another team member and this, in this territory, and it was really interesting to hear, this side of, or what's unique about, that territory or that
Yep.
part of the business or whatever. So you need to go above and beyond in any way you can to stand out. And so by following up, by reaching out to everyone that you possibly can, that's definitely a way to do it. But just kind of a quick story in another interview process I had, that one where I first initially got that interview, something that I think really helped me get the interview is I found the area manager and I messaged him on LinkedIn and he never got back to me. But the first thing that they said to me when I sat down with everyone who was interviewing me is they laughed. They said, "Alex, you did some serious stalking on LinkedIn." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not afraid to reach out to people." And they really appreciated that I found the decision maker. Didn't hear back from him, but he definitely, remembered my name, and maybe that's why I got the interview. I'm not really sure why, but
I love it.
long story short, yeah, that's what I would say, just in general in the interview process and for my particular interview process.
Oh my gosh, Alex, you just dropped so many bombs. If you guys were just listening, please rewind the last like 6 minutes and just go back and listen to that 8 times, and that will help you get a job. Just that by itself, man. I was sitting over here trying to be taking notes on my phone without breaking eye contact, but because you're so right in every aspect you just said. And I wanted to touch on a couple of them for our listeners. Is first off, the belief. The belief is the number one. Fake it till you make it. And if you don't think you're going to make it, you won't make it, right? It's the mindset of everybody. If you got to believe you can do the job before you get the job. And like you said, by the end of it, that's what I told people is when I first started, I sucked. I didn't know. I had never gone through the interview process, but guess what? By the 11th one, I was the best. I got prepared and nobody was going to beat me. And I knew, like I was prepared to say, hey, I can't wait to work for this company. But if you don't take me, I totally understand. But just know for every company I'm going to work for, I'm going to make an impact. Like whoever I work for, that's just who I am. And like it's fun to like make these podcasts and do this to see where I was a personal trainer 9 months ago. I took over the lowest performing territory in the nation, and now I just broke top 10 in the new quota. Like I believed that before I ever even got the position, right? And so what you said right there, you believing in yourself. First off, it's a confidence they can see. But second of all, they sense when you believe it, they know it. Like my manager knew I was going to come in and make a difference. So with you saying that, man, I wanted to hit on that point because if you don't believe you can do the job, they can see that through you. You're working with top salespeople, right? Like they can read you like a book. So if you have any doubt, they're like, we're not going to go with this candidate because we don't want to take a chance on someone who doesn't believe in themselves if we're supposed to believe in them.
Right. No, that's spot on. And it's so important. I think it's kind of forgotten sometimes because that's before you even, really get rolling. That's something that I think is really important to just before you take that leap of faith, you need to have that down and it will go a very long way.
Yeah, it's going to go huge. And then again, a couple other notes I took: follow up, stand out. I actually just recorded a podcast before this with Logan. You guys can go back and listen to it. And with Logan said the same thing, right? When you guys are following up and you're asking a question, you're doing something different. What that's doing is, like you said, 90% of people are following up. And if they're not, they should be. But they're following up and they're just doing a simple question. Well, that's everybody else. I made a podcast a couple weeks ago about above average. The average person just says thanks for your time, but the above average person ask a question, or above average person takes something from that interview, maybe something they could have improved on or a question, and they bring it back because you know what that makes that manager think? Wow, Jake's still thinking about that question 3 hours later or 2 hours later. Like he really does care about this. Or like you said, you just did research and you asked a question showing that you really do care about this compared to, the average person's just going to say, thanks, and so again, how you were able to make yourself stand out in the follow-up is great. And that's a great tip to anybody who's listening. Please use that because you're talking to a guy right now, Mr. Alex, who has a job because he did follow up and he did the right things. And then like you said, networking, I wanted to touch on that again. I say that till I'm blue in the face. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And like you said, that's a great point for just even on the networking. I want to touch on real quick, Alex, is how you said you talk to other people on different teams. And what I tell people all the time is that's why I highly encourage everyone, you should go talk to a trauma rep. You should go talk to a cardiac rep. You should go talk to a capital sales rep, a minimally invasive, like everybody, because it's going to tell you what their life's like. They're going to tell you what they like, they don't like, and their lifestyle and how much money they can make and if it fits you. So I love that you're able to do that because, I knew there were certain divisions, even if I got the job offer, I wasn't going to take it because it didn't fit my lifestyle. So being able to talk to that while you're in the interview process goes so far.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point, Jacob.
And the last one I want to just put on regional manager. So I laugh that you did that. I did the exact same thing. So I reached out, I found out who mine was. I actually 4 times I reached out to my regional manager. She never responded back. But every time I just was like nice and did it the right
Yep.
way. And then eventually, like 5 months into it, I found who her used to be associate sales rep was when she was a TM. And thus that person liked me and texted her within a day. I got a text back, a call back. And then
Yep.
we made that relationship. And then same thing. I went into my interview and I went back and like 4 months prior, I had sent a message to my VP that I was now interviewing with, showing that, hey, this isn't my first rodeo and I didn't just quit after the first 3 months, So I love that you talked about sending out those messages because even if they don't respond, it shows like that 4 months later, 2 months later, whatever it is, that you were able to find who the decision maker was and that you weren't afraid to like send out and be able to put yourself out there. And like you said, they knew who you at least were when you walked into the interview.
Yeah. No, definitely. It takes persistence. It's not even for my case, I learned from it. I only messaged that regional manager once and I mean I learned going forward, follow up more. So definitely it worked in your favor there. So yeah, that's an awesome point.
I love it. And I did want to touch on, I know you said it was like a faster interview process for you. How long
Yeah.
was the interview process? Just to give the listeners an idea, like for what
Yeah.
fast is considered.
So it was unique because I actually didn't touch on this the first go around, but I interviewed. So same thing, the recruiter that I had a great relationship with referred me to a job in a different territory, and I didn't get the position. They, the feedback that I received was they wanted a local candidate, and so that was okay. And so I guess I made a good enough impression on that manager. She referred me to another territory, and then the recruiter was also working with that territory. So, all in all, between that process and the end of the process where I just got hired, I would say it was probably a month and a half or so. And that other people that got hired with me, there was a few other hires. It was a much longer for them.
Yep.
So take that with a grain of salt. Every company does it different, and every territory does it different. When there's a need to be filled, they're going to move a little bit faster, and they're not going to have time to wait for you. If oh hey, my lease is up in 6 months, can you wait 6 months? The answer is probably going to be no. So that's a big thing about getting hired in the industry. You need to be ready to move, and you're probably not going to get your first choice within your territory your first territory's choice or vice versa.
Yep.
It's not going to be very smooth where, I get to stay in my hometown or I get to stay, an hour away. You might have to pick up and move. And that's part of the process. And so that's what I had to do in order to, really, reach my goal of working for this company.
100%, man. And I love that you took that on yourself to, not let that limit you of being able to go. But I wanted you guys to just hear that, like Alex said, quick, right? And we always joke around, we do quotations, right? 6 weeks, a month and a half, 6, 8 weeks. That's a quick process in medical device sales. And he's 100% right.
Right.
If it just matters the need, right? Like I got told, hey, we're looking, so it might be 3-4 months, that's why I always say be the player on the bench because people think it moves fast. But like even in my process, right? I got the call 3 weeks before it was ever told. And I was told, hey, we're trying to have this hired in 3-4 weeks. It was like 10 weeks, 12 weeks before I even I went through my final interview, right? So like it gets stretched out. So like when people call me and they're like, I want to break in within the next 2 months, probably not going to happen because just when you're the final candidate and you get a call before it even starts, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 months before you even go. So just to give you guys an idea, like this does not move fast. And another point I do want to just touch on is Alex is 100% right. I have a lot of candidates who will call me and they're like, I don't want to leave. When you commit that you're not leaving, you just narrowed it to the whole nation of breaking into this medical device, which is a very tough industry to break into. But you just narrowed it to a small, very big or small box. To now, instead of having thousands of options, there's hundreds of options, maybe even less than that. And now each position that opens up, there's hundreds to thousands of candidates applying for that position. So I want to touch on that. What Alex is saying is, same for me. I was on a lot of calls and I said, hey, I am open to moving because I am 25. I'm young. Like, I don't have a family. I can do that now. And I know once I break in, you guys can always get back to where you're trying to go, because the hardest part's getting in. Once you're into the industry, there's always a position for you. You have the experience, and that's what they want. But you have to make those sacrifices. I'll just be honest. My first position I got offered was in Atlanta, and I was going to take it. The only reason I didn't take Atlanta is because I really did want to stay here in Phoenix, if I could. But again, Phoenix is 7 million people, so it's a pretty big area, a lot of opportunities. But in the same respect, I had already 2 calls and got told I was a favorite in one of them. So the only reason I stayed and was like, I'm going to play it out here, was because I was told I was a finalist. If those 2 were not on the table, you would see me living at Atlanta right now. Because I would have done what I had to do to break into this industry. So I appreciate you saying that, Alex, because again, a lot of people will come in with this, I don't want to say spoiled, but like this tinted mindset of like, I
Yep.
want it to happen for me when I want it. And let me just tell you, that is not this industry.
Yeah, no, I'm going to touch on that a little bit, Jacob. I think that everyone's situation is different. I don't mean to jump on anyone by saying this, but I think that you're not fully dedicated to the interview process unless you have another factor in your life that is forcing you to stay in that city. Like you said, it's kind of spoiled to think that I want to get into medical device sales and I want to be in this city. It's hard enough. There's tons of people that are willing to move into your city to get this position that you want. So if you're serious about it and you don't have, maybe a family issue or something like that, you're locked into a lease that is, you're not going to be able to get out of, something along those lines. There's other factors, and I totally understand that. I'm not harsh to that, to those other realities of life, but you need to be able to move, like we said. And, my first job offer that I received was about as far away as possible from Ohio. So it was extremely far. I was ready to do it, but another opportunity came up a little bit closer to home, and I thought it would prepare me to do what I needed to do, to accomplish my goals in the industry more with this position. So yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So
No, I love that. And
appreciate that, Jacob.
yeah, here's the thing is, like, when you have options, like for us, we both had options, so we can take a closer one, or we can wait. Like, I believed in myself. Hey, maybe I don't get this one. Maybe I didn't really want to move to Atlanta personally, right? But it's like, hey, I already had some things cooking. I already got told I was a finalist, but I was like, maybe I'll wait another year. And maybe it's a year before I get a position here in Phoenix to even interview for
Right.
it. But I was
Mm-hmm.
okay with that. It's the people who will call that are like, I want a job in the next 3-6 months, but I don't want to move. I don't want to do this. And I'm just like, hey, it's tough. And especially, this is always my thing. If you got a family, you got kids, respect. I get that, right? But in the same respect, you can't be picky, right? And you can't. And like, I had a talk with a guy one time. Hey, because of your situation, you might have a family, you might have 2-3 kids, and you want to break in, you're going to be an associate, and you're struggling with the pay cut. Okay, it is what it is, but you don't want to move and you're going to stay in a small area. It might be 3 years before you get an interview. You got to be okay with that, because you just
Yep.
put yourself in a small little box and limited yourself. Now, if you're not, then you can move on. But the thing, I'll even say this to your lease point, right? Again, I'm not a guy who's made for money. I moved out here with $1,200 to my name, not a dollar. Like, I've built everything. But you know what? If I wanted something bad enough, I would have figured out how to make it work. If I was
100%.
I was same here. When I got offered that Atlanta one, I was locked into a lease for another 6 months. But guess what? I knew I was going to make sacrifices, and I might have not had any money to my name, but I would have been able to pay both leases and figure it out why I get there, because it's something I was dedicated and wanted to break into. So again, I say this because you can hear the passion in my voice. I feel like in America, as people, we're spoiled brats, and they feel like they deserve anything. And I've always come from, you don't deserve anything. You're not trusted with anything, and you got to earn everything you get. And so that's why, again, when the people I meet who have that mindset, they're always the people I meet that are breaking into this industry. And the people who message me and say, I want this, I want that, they're the ones who don't get it, because again, me just being harsh and being straight up, a lot of them are coming as a spoiled brat, and they don't want a spoiled brat, because guess what? You're going to have to work a lot, and a spoiled brat's not going to work a lot.
Spot on. And just one last thing I will say, if you do have to relocate for a position, like you said, you can always go back to home. You can be an associate for 2 to 3 years and you can always find another position home. So take a leap of faith that's outside of your comfort zone, and then you can find your way back to your hometown at one point. So that's
100%.
just, yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to say with that. So don't forget that if you move for a little bit, it will not be forever if your goal is getting back to where you're from. So
I say that all the time, especially from being from small town Iowa. I tell my buddies to move out of Iowa all the time. And it's like, hey, you can always come
right.
back, right? Joke around about it. But same thing here. Just so you guys know, when I was going to take that job in Atlanta, that was my plan. I was like, hey, I'll go work in Atlanta for 2 years. It was with a big company. I'll make my way back to Phoenix in 2-3 years, like understanding that I was going to put my foot in and then see what happens. But like you said, Alex, to anybody listening, sometimes you guys just have to like we talked about, believe in yourself. You don't know where you're going. You might not know. It might be scary to move somewhere, but know you're good enough to figure it out, and you can breathe in or take anything that comes with you. And again, just like we said, the hardest part, you'll hear this if you network with lots of reps, the hardest part's breaking into this industry. Once you guys are into this industry, it's not as hard to get a job. It's not like it's a cakewalk, but again, people always want people with experience. So if you can have experience, it's easier to get a position compared to, if you're trying to come in and be the new guy off the block. So again, like Alex said, believe in yourself, maybe go eat it for a couple of years if you are trying to break in, and maybe it's not the best division or it's not something you really want to do, but understand that it's going to build you to be able to live a life in the future that you would like.
100%.
Loved it. I love it. And Alex, can you just give the tips you would give to someone who's trying to break in right now? If they're reaching out to you, they're like, hey, Alex, I'm trying to break in a medical device. What would you say to make sure that you stand out, that they could do today? I know you touched on some points that we talked about in the past that they were all great, but like if someone just said, hey, Alex, what can I do to get hired? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So play your experiences to the position. So if you don't have sales experience, Jacob, if you're a listener to this podcast, you've heard Jacob go into this plenty of times before, but you need to play to your experiences. And a huge thing is you need to back up everything that you say in the interview process, because they don't know you, you don't know them. When I first started out, I would say, I'm a really hard worker, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about it, but I need to say what I would say in the interview process is I'm a hard worker because I started out, I did door-to-door sales for 2 years. I had doors slammed in my face. It was hot. It was the Ohio summer. And I even did it in the winter when I was home from college. And so I know how to work hard in conditions that are not ideal. So something along those lines. So
Yes.
if you are a hard worker, you're backing it up by this example, this experience with my job, or say not even sales experience. Say if you were a waitress, or a waiter, whatever, I'm a hard worker because, our restaurant would get pretty much, it would be full to capacity every single Saturday night, and I would work that Saturday, and I wouldn't even have a second to use the restroom or take a break, whatever. And so I know how to work in tough conditions. I'm not going to go into all that, but you see what I mean. Just backing up everything that you say and showing them that you have already done the job before you've got the job. So I don't know if I stole it from you, Jacob, or from someone else.
I have said that a lot.
Okay. Yeah. I knew I stole it from someone. So that's not an original piece from me, but yeah, show them that though, just by telling them that your experience will fit in this, and that there's so many different ways that you can, communicate that, and so many different positions that you've had that you might not think that, hey, this is going to align with this position. You'd be surprised. You really need to just think as hard as you can about what you did in the job, what made it difficult, what were your duties, and you can translate it to a medical device position. And, if you do hear no, make a good impression with whoever you're interviewing with, because I've had multiple times where I've gotten an email, hey, Alex, we got your name from so-and-so who interviewed you, and you made quite the impression. So we have this position available. And I'm sitting there like, wow, okay, I guess I did something right in that process. And although I didn't get the job, someone else just did the talking for me.
Yep.
You'll get to a point with networking and with interviewing where, say you're still not getting any jobs, but your name is going to be well known enough to help you finally break in and get that job. So if you don't get the job, don't say, oh my gosh, screw this person. Why didn't they pick me? I'm the best candidate for it. Still build a relationship with them. And so going back to standing out. So really playing on your experiences and showing them that, you're capable of doing the job, that you've already done so with your different duties and the characteristics and traits needed to do it. And also just really any opportunity you have in front of a hiring manager or anyone just who's making the decisions, use that to your advantage, because it took me, excuse me, it probably took you a long time as well, Jacob, to finally get in front of people that are decision makers. So
Yep.
if you do and it doesn't go well, it's not a loss permanently, it's just a loss temporary. So
Yep.
make it as good of an, as good as an impression as you can, so later it will play in your favor, and it will come, if you work hard at it long enough, if you network, if you take a job that maybe you don't want to do, maybe you don't want to do trauma, maybe you don't want to do orthopedics in general, maybe you have a certain company that you have to work for, just take what you can get. And then, like Jacob said, you can transition once you have experience. People that will hire you a lot more likely when you have experience. You're coming from another competitive company or just a similar, similar company in general, or whatever. So yeah, don't take it for granted when you have those opportunities, and just give it your all and it will come. I believed, Jacob believed, I just, again, that back to that, that belief in yourself. Even before I knew it was even true, or it was even like likely from my resume, I just told myself, I'm going to get a job with one of these top companies. I
Yep.
know I am. Like, I don't know who, but it's going to happen. And
Yep.
just, it will happen. Just, believe in yourself and work hard, and, great things will come of it.
Alex, man, again, I just want to take that clip and replay it over and over for these guys, because again, you're 100% on. That was, you guys, again, please go back and listen to this episode 2, 3, 4 times if you guys are still trying to break in, because Alex has gone into so much detail to help you guys stand out, even just like he talked about, just giving you examples, right? Like, you're 100% right, Alex. Like I always used to say during the interview process, talk is cheap. I can tell you whatever you want to hear, but guess what? It doesn't mean that how am I going to back it up? And then that's why it was always like, hey, I ran my own business. Like you said, using examples every single time, that's going to be number one. Number two, I want to touch on having a good impression, because let's bring this back to doing the job while you're trying to get the job. If you're trying to get a job and they don't pick you, and then you're like, screw you, I don't want to like kick rocks, and you talk bad about someone, well, guess what? They're going to hear about it eventually, and maybe they don't, but you say that to the next person. Well, that next person is going to be like, well, that's what they're going to say about us if we don't get it, first off. And second
Yep.
off, well, that's the world you're going into. Are you going to talk bad about every doctor that decides not to use you and your equipment after you sell on them? Like, again, just doing the job while you're trying to get it. So again, 100%, Alex, about just like those points of, hey, you need to be able to do the job while you're trying to get the job, being able to show examples, because just saying something's not good enough. And then again, being able to have yourself stand out and believe in yourself, because I'll tell you, like, you can tell when you guys listen to Alex and how he can go and how the passion comes out of him. It's the same with me. I'm not going to talk about something I'm not passionate about. And we talk about this time. I laugh around because right behind your head, Alex, in your picture, you got a clock, and that's my biggest driver. This is actually what this is: 86,400 seconds. That's how many seconds are in a day. We all have the same amount of time in the day, but I'm not going to waste my time on something I don't want to like not do. I'm going to go hard in it. And so again, just being able to believe in yourself and be like, hey, I'm going to be better than this next person. And it doesn't even have to be like that competitive. It can be, I'm going to be the best version of myself. But I just believed in myself. Hey, once I break in, I know I'm good at what I do, and I will make an impact. And guess what? I don't know it now, but in 6 months I will, or in a year or 2 years, but I'll figure it out. And that's the belief that comes into this, because again, I'm telling you guys, if you don't believe in yourself, why would someone else believe in you and take a chance on you? So again, Alex, I just want to say thank you, because you dropped so much knowledge on for our listeners. And again, if you guys are listening, please go watch this 2-3 times, because Alex touched on so many big points. And again, he's living proof of being with one of the top distributors in the nation. And now he's with one of the top companies in the world, and being able to have success at such a young age is absolutely amazing. So again, Alex, thank you so much for just sharing your point of view, sharing your tips, and then also just being able to take time and help our listeners out, because we really appreciate it.
No problem, Jacob. I really appreciate you asking me to come on. I hope something that I said today uh, resonates with someone, and it will come quicker than you think. You will you'll blink your eyes if you're a listener or if you're trying to get in, and boom, you'll be doing the job. So enjoy the process. It's definitely one to remember. And I'm Jacob. What you're doing is awesome. It definitely is helping tons of people. And you know, uh, lo- looking forward to keep listening to your content. And who you bring on still helps me, even now being in the industry. So yeah, it's great, man, and happy we were able to connect.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Alex. Thank you so much. Again, congratulations on the new position. Being able to land it with your dream company is absolutely amazing. And again, guys, it's so much fun to have Alex on here today because again, he was a listener. We were talking, he's been listening. Also, he just has been able to just come and listen to all the tips and see him use it. It's been so much fun to see him actually land where he wants to go. So it's just been a lot of fun to have listeners listen to the podcast and now be getting their own jobs and doing it. So again, appreciate it. But if you guys are watching, please press that like and subscribe button on YouTube. If you guys are listening on the podcast, leave a 5-star review. It helps us reach more people about and tell them about this awesome industry. And then lastly, if you guys are still looking on breaking in, we talk about that new to medical device sales ebook that I have. The link is in the description where I go into detail how I got 4 job offers with no previous sales experience. I put my business plan in there. I put messages I sent to managers. I teach you guys how everything I did to break in. So if you guys would like that, again, the link is in the description or it's new to medicaldevicesales.com. But again, Alex, thank you so much for jumping on with us and we will see you guys on the next one. Peace.